Linda Tyler, thank you so much for joining us on the Plant Trainers podcast today.
It is great to be here. Thanks so much for the invitation.
You're welcome. I see your book in the background. I've got my copy
All
here.
right.
We're gonna talk about that soon, but before we do you have a moment of gratitude that you want to share with us and the listeners?
Well, my most recent moment of gratitude was for the visit of my sister. My sister lives in the next state in Boise. I live in Portland, and she came and visited this last weekend. So we had a great time, sort of picked up where we left off, and it was just a great time. So I'm very gratified for that.
It's great to have time with family members, especially when you have a deep connection with them. And that's one of our pillars in terms of, relaxation, lifestyle, spending time with people who bring you up.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, that's great.
Good. So
Yeah.
why don't you tell us a little bit about how you found the plant-based slash vegan lifestyle?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I became a vegetarian in college. So that was a while ago. So I haven't had meat in a very long time. And it was for animal welfare reasons. I just didn't think animals should be killed for us to eat since we could survive without that. And then a couple of decades after that, I read more about egg farms and dairy farms and thought, ugh, killing is one thing, but just miserable lives for these animals is not good either. So I went vegan. And then about 5 years later, in 2015, I went to a conference, the Vegetarian Summerfest in Pennsylvania, and heard speakers like Dr. Greger, T. Colin Campbell, other speakers. It just blew me away, like that plant-based eating could be so healthy and could be basically the healthiest way of eating on the planet. So, the trifecta is there, the animal welfare, the environmental concerns, and then really so many health benefits that I just went home and started kind of reconfiguring how I cooked and ate. And, it wasn't all at once. It continues to be a journey for me. But I just, I changed the way I developed recipes and started teaching cooking classes in a plant-based way. And so, the last 9 or 10 years have just been exploration of this such an interesting way of eating, and so much more research than there used to be. I'm a volunteer video reviewer for Dr. Greger's nutritionfacts.org site. So I get exposure to a lot of the research through that, and then I pursue my own as well. But it's been a great ride in that way, and I just love the plant-based lifestyle.
How has it changed over the years? Has there been a progression or things that you've let go of or picked up along the way?
Yeah, so, I think when I first heard about healthy plant-based eating, the first thing that shocked me was oil, using oil and finding out what a processed ingredient it was and how our bodies really don't register it well. They don't, our bodies just let all those calories go through, and they can wreak a lot of havoc for many reasons. And so, of course, I'm like 99% of other cooks who I used to saute things with oil, start every dish with a couple glugs of oil, get those onions going. And so I didn't give it up cold turkey. I just like decreased it by half and saw what happened. And then I decreased it by 3/4 and saw like, this isn't making that much difference to the taste or to how to do it. And then finally, I mean, it probably took a few months. Finally, I said, I'll just water saute or broth saute. So oil, was one thing that took a while. Desserts, I love to bake. And so phasing out all-purpose flour and really finding other flours that worked well. And it was also a gradual process, but that's done. And just not eating even like whole wheat crackers, or because usually if they're from the store, they have all-purpose flour in them, they have oil in them. So just all the little snacks snack type food and really getting down to a few nuts, a few pieces of dried fruit, a fresh apple, vegetable sticks, that I think takes a lot of time. I've found that among my clients too, my students, it takes a while to reconfigure all your snacking habits. And so I think that those are the main things that took me a little while to transition.
And it would take anybody a little while to transition because it's how many years have you been used to eating
Exactly.
the other way? So it's not just a matter of your taste buds, it's also mindset, it's what you're comfortable with, what you've learned to do in certain situations. So there's a lot to unravel there.
Yeah, our brains are programmed to form habits, so that they don't have to think, they don't have to decide. So everything we do, so many things we do are habits, and to change a habit takes effort. And nobody should feel ashamed when it takes a while to change a habit, because it really is unwinding something and winding something up. It just, yeah, people shouldn't feel bad like, oh, it's taking me a while. It takes most people a while to change a lot of habits, and eating is very habituated. So yeah, it's really a set of habits.
So what got you super interested in inflammation?
Well, I've been following especially Dr. Greger's research. And so I read How Not to Die, his first major book about the 15 leading causes of death in the US. And I saw inflammation mentioned there, and I probably just kind of glossed over it because he covered so many topics and so many reasons that a bad diet can contribute to your risk of some of these deadly diseases. And then I read How Not to Diet. Maybe it was like 5 years later, and there was inflammation again related to obesity. Actually, our body fat can release pro-inflammatory molecules that then cause inflammation. And it was like, huh, there it is again. And then as I read more, I found that inflammation is related to aging. And, of course, that's when it got personal. It's like, hey, this is crazy. And there's even a term called inflammaging that was coined about 2 decades ago, because there's just such a tight connection between some of the processes that age us and some of the results of aging and inflammation, that all of us need to be concerned about inflammation, because inflammation can not only increase your risk of deadly disease, but also it can just weaken you and damage tissues in a variety of places. Even if you don't have autoimmune or don't have allergies, which of course are the major inflammation related diseases, inflammation can affect you even if you can't actively detect it. But it's something to pay attention to. And most of my parents and my grandparents died of some of these major diseases: heart disease, cancer, stroke, Parkinson's, and all of them are related to inflammation. So it was kind of a wake-up call for me, like, this is the time to get interested. And because I have exposure to the research, and I have the recipe writing chops and the photography skills, it was just a great project for me to put it all together in one book.
So when we talk about inflammation, are we talking about the swelling of certain parts inside the body? What exactly are we referring to?
Yeah, that's a great question. Basically, inflammation is the result of the immune response. So it's our immune system that causes inflammation, because when there's a germ or when there's bacteria or some other irregularity that the immune system evolved to protect us from, the immune system releases chemicals that swells nearby blood vessels. It makes them more permeable, so more fluid can get into the area where help is needed. It causes the creation of more immune cells, because they call for reinforcements. And so this whole swelling, and then it tries to capture the invaders, and sometimes there's tissue involved in that, and tissue gets damaged, and nerve endings cause pain. So that's the way the immune system works. That's what it does. It swells and it eats and it, has some collateral damage. When it's a cut or a sunburn or a cold virus or a flu virus, we live with the inflammation because it's short term. So we live with the sore throat, the runny nose, the redness and pain of a sunburn, the swelling and warmness of a cut, because that's our inflammation doing the job it evolved to do. But the immune system also reacts to things in our bodies that really weren't as prevalent as we evolved in an environment of scarcity. So it reacts to plaque that's on our arteries. Like the immune system doesn't like that plaque is there. So it starts to attack the plaque, which then swells those arteries, which makes them more swollen, sore. It doesn't go away. It's chronic. Or like I mentioned, if we have excess body fat, that releases pro-inflammatory chemicals that then the immune system responds to. And then it goes on the attack against our body fat. Of course, that doesn't stop in a quick manner. So we have this constant state of swollenness and some tissue damage. And that same immune response can increase our insulin resistance, which of course then makes it complicit with type 2 diabetes. It can create an environment of oxidation, which cancer can thrive in a little more. So we don't want our immune system to be activated. We just want our immune system to react when there's a germ or bacteria or some other irregularity that will save our lives if it gets rid of it. But actually, right now, the immune system is reacting to a lot of things that our standard American diet have introduced into our body.
So there's a lot of information there, but pulling it back to the idea, if just to summarize it, is that inflammation is not always a bad thing. Inflammation is needed for the body to recover. But when
That's
that inflammation becomes long-term, then it starts to create the damage, right? We're not able to fix the tissues. That's when the body starts to attack itself because that inflammation isn't going away and the body is just starting to break down in those areas.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Yeah. No. Great. So people are probably thinking, okay, I mean, I hear it all the time from my clients. I have a lot of inflammation. I have a lot of inflammation. And sometimes that's aches and pains. Sometimes that's problems in the body. Sometimes they just feel really swollen, right? It means a lot of different things. And we do know that if you live a happier, healthier overall lifestyle, your inflammation should become normal. Not that you shouldn't have any, but it should become normal. But in your book, The Plant-Based Anti-Inflammatory Cookbook, such beautiful photography in there as well as recipes, you talk about anti-inflammatory superstars. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So in the course of various research studies, researchers have found that certain foods are extra good at calming inflammation, and they're measuring, inflammation markers in blood tests. There are some blood tests that can detect inflammation markers. So those are good measures of inflammation, chronic inflammation in your system. So they found that ginger and turmeric, for example, are great at lowering inflammation. And garlic, that's good because I love garlic. And green and black tea, especially as beverages, also chamomile tea. And then all the dark red, purple, blue, black fruits and vegetables, even the grains and beans, like black beans, have a particular kind of micronutrient called anthocyanins. And anthocyanins are great at lowering inflammation. So berries, extra good, dark purple vegetables, dark purple fruits, they're all great. Obviously, like an eggplant, don't peel that peel because that dark purple peel has anthocyanins in it. And then there's a class of flavones that is in apples and red bell peppers and celery, and those are great as well. And then cruciferous vegetables, because they feed our gut microbiome so well, that helps control inflammation that can happen in the gut. And then all the omega-3 sources, like nuts and flaxseed meal and chia seeds, those are also great for controlling inflammation because of those short chain fatty acids that are created in the colon from omega-3s. So there's, several dozen superfoods, all grocery store items, not expensive supplements. So I of course worked those superstars into my recipes, and those are all things we can eat. They're not just crazy expensive, natural food store type ingredients. They're things we can eat all the time. So if we can orient our snacks, our meals, our breakfasts to those things, we can really go a long way toward decreasing our chronic inflammation. Not just adding these things, but also not eating some of the things that aggravate inflammation. And those include things like saturated fat. Saturated fat creates a state of oxidation in the body, that those free radicals damage things that the immune system tries to fix. Saturated fat is also very bad for the gut, which can cause leaky gut, which can cause more things to go into the bloodstream that the immune system doesn't want. So saturated fats, especially in meats and butter, high-fat dairy, even vegan butter, vegan margarine, vegan pizza, cheese, cream, especially beef, but all sorts of meats. Those are high in saturated fat. And so a lot of restaurant food, a lot of takeout food, fast food, of course, those all contain a lot of saturated fats. So as much as you can cook on your own and cook healthy foods, that's the way to do it. And then refined grains, refined sugars, of course, those lead to a state of oxidation, which is pro-inflammatory because the blood sugar spikes, free radicals are created. So, those crackers and cookies I was talking about, not good. Processed foods with a lot of white flour, white sugar, even homemade desserts, even though they're homemade, if they have a lot of sugar and all-purpose flour, it's not good for your inflammation. And then finally, there's endotoxins, which mostly get into our bodies through meat. And they're toxic chemicals that are very inflammatory. Even if you cook your meat and chew your meat and it goes through your stomach, those endotoxins get into your colon and really set off the immune system. So, the standard American diet with lots of meat, with lots of butter, with lots of cheese, that's not good for inflammation.
So take out saturated fats, remove processed foods, and include more anti-inflammatory superstars, like you mentioned in your book.
Yeah.
Tell me, is there a difference if you cook these superstars versus not? Do they lose some of their anti-inflammatory properties?
You're so smart. That's a question I was
Oh,
thinking.
sorry.
No, it's good.
Two great minds. Not that I have seen at all. No, you can cook them or eat them raw. I have not seen that makes a difference. So that's good news. You can have them however you like them. Plus, if they're frozen vegetables, that's fine as well. They don't have to be fresh.
Which
So
makes it easier for a lot of people, right?
Yeah. Even I have some frozen broccoli and cauliflower in my freezer. So like on those days I'm rushed, I can put those in a bowl, put a little water in them, put them in the microwave, and having a couple cups of broccoli and cauliflower, that's so much better for me than, grabbing a few pieces of semi-multi-grain bread, that's probably has a lot of all-purpose flour in it, if I'm honest. So I try to really minimize that. And so, yeah, you have to sort of figure out all those hacks that can keep you on the straight and narrow when you're in a hurry and you need to eat.
Definitely preparing food in advance and having it in the fridge, or having a plan, at least having a plan.
That's
definitely
right.
helps.
That's right. Yeah.
When we spoke on the Zoom a couple of weeks ago, you were talking about a really impressive meta-analysis. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. This is a meta-analysis led by Joel Craddock. He's a researcher from Australia in a medical school in Australia. And he and his colleagues did a systematic review and meta-analysis based on 40 studies, some interventional and some sort of associative studies. And they looked at all of the studies related to inflammation markers. That was the measure of success, and compared vegetarian or vegan diets with meat-centered diets or just standard, Western diets. And overall, the vegetarian vegan diets led to lower inflammation markers in the blood, so lower chronic inflammation. So that was the first of its kind where it brought all these studies together. There's also something called the Dietary Inflammation Index, which is another set of studies by researchers. They found the same thing, that a plant-centered diet was much better for inflammation, chronic inflammation in the blood. And so there have been now these several mega studies that have helped establish that, yes, vegetarian and vegan diets are much better for your inflammation markers.
Amazing. It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Good. So I want to know, everybody's like, it's like asking me to pick my favorite child. I want to know what some of your favorite recipes are that people can look forward to in the plant-based anti-inflammatory cookbook, Delicious Whole Food Recipes to Reduce Inflammation and Promote Health by Linda Tyler.
Thank you. Well, I'd have to say the one I use most often is the Daily Habit Berry Smoothie, which is just my way of getting a half cup of berries every day. I try to get a half cup of obviously dark green, purple berries. I usually use frozen blueberries. In the summer, I'm fine. I can just eat fresh berries. But throughout the cold months, it's a way of, I make 4 at a time, and it's, easy peasy, 2 cups of frozen berries, 1 frozen banana, some ginger, some flaxseed meal, and then some water. You don't need a sweetener because blueberries are quite sweet. And I blend those, and then I have these small smoothies for 4 days. So I freeze 3 of them, eat 1 that day, and then the next 3 days I have my smoothie. So I have that constantly. And sometimes I have some yogurt I can put on it or some granola, but it's great plain. It's not my full breakfast, but it's a nice thing to have for breakfast to make sure I get my blueberries. And then one of the more novel recipes that I've heard from people about is the orange ginger polenta cake, because it starts with boiling 2 navel oranges for 45 minutes. So you just plop the 2 oranges into the pot of boiling water, get them and let them simmer whole for 45 minutes. You let them cool a little bit after that, and then you put them in, you chunk them up, put them in the blender with other wet ingredients. And then the dry ingredients are mostly polenta or cornmeal, plus a few other things. And in baking it, the cake, all the polenta absorbs all that juice and other liquid ingredients, and it comes out as a nice dense cake that everybody who's made it really, really likes it. And it has that like, what? You're going to boil oranges and use the whole orange, all the rind? Yes, it works, and it's great. I think one of my favorite entrees is the baked penne, whole wheat penne with red bell peppers and mushrooms. And I use my plant-based ricotta cheese in it with some marinara. So you bake the penne, you saute vegetables, and then you swirl in the ricotta, put some of my plant-based Parmesan on top and bake that. So it's like a comfort food casserole, but it has all the anti-inflammatory ingredients in it. So those are a few. I could go on, but those are a few of my favorites.
Yeah, they sound great, and we have the book, so we're going to definitely check out some more of them. We've made a couple already, and we're going to share that with our audience. If people want to reach out and connect with you or learn more about what you're doing, where would you like them to go?
Yeah, so they can go to my website, graciousvegan.com. And if they have a direct question, they can go to the Contact Me tab, or they can also sign up for my biweekly newsletter and get the latest there. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as Gracious Vegan, so they can find me there as well.
Great. So we'll link to all that in the show notes at planttrainers.com. Linda, thank you so much for joining us
Thank you so
today
much.
on the Plant
Thanks.
Trainers podcast. Yeah, thank
Great
you.
to be here. Thank you.